Okay, we are back. I'm very happy to have on the Goldstein on Gelt show Professor Ofer Azar, who went to school and got his PhD at Northwestern University in the United States, but now is teaching at Ben-Gurion University. He's teaching one of the favorite topics here at the Goldstein on Gelt show, behavioral finance. Professor, real pleasure to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So one of the issues that we've certainly spoken about a lot here, and I know that this is what you study, is that a lot of times when people are doing bad financially, it's not because the markets are bad or because prices are high. It's because they manage things poorly. And I know one of the examples might be just how people buy stuff. They make all these mistakes when they're trying to buy things more cheaply. How do you see that? What are some of the mistakes that people make?
The common mistake is that they look at prices relative to other prices and look at the price differences in relative terms instead of looking at the absolute differences. And this could result in one of two types of mistakes, but they are related. When people buy something cheap, they might spend a lot of time to save just a little bit, because in percentage it looks significant. For example, if you want to buy a pen and you might spend a lot of time to save just $1 because it's 50%. And probably the even worse mistake is the opposite. When you buy a car or you build a house and the expenses are large, you easily spend a lot of money on things that you wouldn't normally spend, or you don't look enough for a cheaper price. Because in percentage it looks just a small savings, a small percentage saving, but in fact it's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that the number of dollars someone might save might be so little. For example, if he's going, if he goes to a restaurant and they say 50% off, he goes, great. So instead of paying $10 for the meal, I only pay $5. And it might have taken him a long time to find that deal. On the other hand, if he's buying, for example, a car, and he won't spend the same amount of time in order to try and get some commensurate level of savings, is that the issue?
Yes, it's if you spend much more time saving $5 when you buy something that costs $10. Than when you buy something that costs $100 or $1,000, and you might spend an hour to save $5 when you buy something that costs $10, but then a few days later refuse to spend an hour to save $30 on something that costs $1,000, just because it seems to you to be smaller because of the percentage being smaller. And if you made the opposite decisions, if you didn't spend the hour on the cheap item and you do spend the hour on the expensive item, you could still just spend 1 hour but save $30 instead of just saving $5.
Would you say that there's some logic to that? Let's say someone's going to invest $100,000 in a portfolio of stocks and bonds. Does it really pay if he's trying to save $30 here or there? He just says, listen, I just want to be invested because over the long term, I'm hoping this is going to grow by tens of thousands of dollars. It's not worth trying to figure out, can I get this for a penny less or, a little bit less than it's showing right now?
I didn't study so much investing behavior. In investments, often the percentages are the right thing to consider, so it's a little bit different.
Interesting. Why do you think, at the end of the day, you're spending money to buy something. Why do you suppose there'd be a difference?
The idea is that to save $10, you should make the same effort regardless of price of the good. You could think about applications of this in investing, maybe in terms of fixed fees, or if you have to make an effort to go to one branch rather than another branch, but that saves you some money. But if you think about like returns on a portfolio, then the percentages are relevant because, well, it's returns and the earnings are usually you think about them relative to the investment amount, both the upside and the downside.
We're talking with Professor Ofer Azar, who is at Ben-Gurion University. A few years back, actually, one of his articles was chosen by the New York Times as one of the most important ideas of the year. So he looks a lot at how people make decisions, and sometimes very poor decisions, in handling their money. We were talking for a minute about how people sometimes make poor decisions, specifically maybe about how they will decide on what to invest or how much they should spend on a specific investment. Tell me something, Ofer, why is it that people have this kind of disconnect between what's something, let's say, why do they have a disconnect between how much time they should be investing of their own time to make a decision on a small purchase compared to a big purchase?
It's not entirely clear why people do it, but it seems to be something very natural. It might be that in many contexts it is reasonable, and then people get used to think about relative terms, and they don't realize the situations in which this no longer makes sense. So they keep following the behavior that makes sense in other cases, also when it's no longer rational or beneficial to follow it. And that leads them to the behavior of not making enough effort to save when they purchase something big and the percentage discount seems small, despite the amount being large. And on the other hand, when buying something cheap, making too much effort to save and not realizing it's not worth their time.
Mm-hmm. It's something I often find funny. In my day job, I'm a financial advisor. I only do the radio gig a couple of times a week. And one of the things that I'll find funny is how people make irrational decisions. I remember just recently I was speaking to a client who said, who asked about the cost of getting a checkbook so that he could write checks off his account. And I explained it would cost $25 a year. And he said, oh, well, then I don't want that because I can get it for free at another company. All I need to do is deposit $100,000 there and I get free checking. And I said, really? I said, that's the math you're doing? They're going to pay you $0 on that deposit and they give you free checking. So it's funny to me how people will make a decision that just seems so irrational. And even sometimes when you show them the numbers, they don't necessarily see this. Do you find there's a difference in the way people make these decisions if they're wealthy or if they're not wealthy?
I didn't look into the income of people. It's also, I've been doing most of the experiments with students. I did one of my early experiments still at Northwestern with the economics professors. So they probably earn much more than students, but on the other hand, they also differ along other dimensions. They still showed the similar behavior. And I did look at whether studying economics makes people a little bit more rational in this specific bias of, I call it relative thinking, and it seems that those who take many economics courses become a little bit better. They are still biased, but a little bit less.
I'm very happy to hear that. So it's interesting you're saying they're still biased, but what you're pointing out is even with, or let's say, look at it positively, people who do get a good economics education might be able to overcome some of these human biases a little better than someone who wasn't educated?
That's how it looks like, yes. I took into account both whether they chose economics as a major and how many years they are already studying economics. And when I take both of these into account and roughly speaking measure how much economics they have already been studying, you see a correlation that means that those who studied more economics courses are less affected by the relative thinking when it should be avoided.
Interesting. Well, I think comparable to taking economics courses is probably actually listening to the Goldstein on Gelt show. I'm betting if you did an experiment like this on listeners to our show, you would find that they never, ever make these sort of irrational decisions. But we'll have to save that for another episode. Professor, we're just about out of time, but in the last few seconds, can you tell us how can people follow you and follow your work?
I have a website, a modest one. It's www.oferazar.com, and I post there sometimes links to stuff that I've been doing, and certainly try to update my CV, which shows the latest articles I've been published.
All right. So we will put a link to that at the show notes of today's show at goldsteinongelt.com. Professor Ofer Azar, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt show.